Welcome back to Earth Station Trek, a show where we trek from the early days on NBC to the future on Paramount Plus or wherever else and everywhere in between. I'm Charles Kelso, and it's my privilege to introduce the Earth Station Trek crew: Keith Johnson,
Still here, haven't been canceled.
Alan Seiler,
I don't even know what to say. Hi, everybody.
and Veronica Dashel.
Hi.
And tonight we're going to be talking about the Strange New Worlds episode tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. But first,
Wait, I thought we were talking about it tonight.
Come back.
Sorry.
And I started to go creeps in this petty pace from day to day.
Well, we decided to forego our usual news and history segment and
Well,
talk a little
we
first
do have
about Star
we
Trek
do have
Prodigy.
one bit of news though.
Okay.
Prodigy was canceled,
I know, that's what I'm saying.
and also this week in Trek history, Prodigy was canceled.
Right.
Yeah.
This week will live in infamy.
Yeah.
I was watching television and working, and I saw Charles's Facebook post, and about the first one you said it was canceled. I said, "Wait, am I reading this wrong?" Because over on our sister network, ESO network, several months ago, Mike Faber had posted about how the show had already been renewed so early into the thing, and everything was positive.
It's coming this winter.
Yeah,
I mean,
what happened?
I mean, it was renewed for a second season before season 1 had finished broadcasting.
Right.
Yeah.
So this has been, I mean, and they were fully in production. They were basically completed on season 2. Right. There was still a little bit of post-production to be done, but everything else was done. The animation was done. I'm guessing the animation was pretty much fully done. The voice work was done. I mean, on 20 episodes.
Yeah. And there's already been ads this winter with Dahl standing there in his uniform.
Right.
I mean, this wasn't even on my radar. This was a sucker punch.
It really was, because you remember it wasn't even a month ago that the TiVo screensaver screen had changed to a full Paramount, landscape where Paramount basically took over the whole thing. And there were Prodigy characters in it.
Yeah.
Rock Talk was in it. I mean, so this is so new that, they're still putting Prodigy characters on their TiVo ads 3-4 weeks ago.
The toys just came out last month.
Right.
Wow.
I mean, this is insane.
Yeah.
And this is literally not one on the rumor mill. There's so many things where you hear the rumors.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing.
Right.
Nothing on the rumor mill. Not from the actors, not from the showrunners, not from inside people. Nothing at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And not even that Prodigy is going to be concluding after season 2, but that season 2 is not coming out. That season 1's getting yanked, and I mean it's already been yanked now. But at the time of announcement, it was like 3 days out.
Yep. It's crazy.
Yeah, off the site after promoting every Star Trek series, every episode for a year.
Hang on. Let me get that up here.
Right.
Boom. Every series, every episode.
Yeah.
And so they, who
can we get Paramount Plus for false advertisement?
Ooh. So, one of the CBS, back when it was still CBS, one of the executives, when they were launching this platform, was like, this will be the home of Star Trek. We want it to be like year-round Star Trek. There should not be a time of year when there's not a Star Trek property on the air. And we did get that for 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just at an absolute loss over this entire situation. This is just bonkers.
Guys, if you look at some of my posts and some of the Facebook groups, I say this a lot, and I know it comes off as kind of sort of naive, which is I still feel that the people who produce content for us should really give a crap about what we think. And of course, especially when you go out on the internet, there's always 10,000 people who get smart ass and say, well, it's a business. That's why they call it show business. I get it. It. We all get it. It's all about profit. That's why Star Trek went from broadcast to streaming. But I'll tell you, things like this and some other stuff that's greatly been concerning me as also a result of mergers, Turner Classic Movies and what's being done to this. I think there's business and then there's business. And there are times where it's about a profit, and there are times you really feel like they don't give a crap.
But here's the thing. Yes, it is a business, but businesses exist because of customers. Who are the customers for Paramount Plus? Paramount Plus, when it was CBS All Access, launched on the back of Star Trek.
Absolutely.
They had nothing else that they were promoting in any kind of meaningful way to get people to sign on to their fledgling service except for Star Trek and the promise of new Star Trek coming.
Yeah. Right.
We were all subscribing to CBS All Access in 2017 when no one knew there was a CBS All Access.
Yes.
Right.
You know?
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. Because they said we're going to be the home of all Star Trek. Because they said things like, we think that there should be Star Trek year round. And I'm like, well, buddy, I'm going to sign up for the $10 a month service because I want to help contribute to this stuff. I want to be part of making that Star Trek landscape that they're talking about. Well, fuck them. Sorry. I'm wound up tonight.
Oh yeah, I've been wound up for days.
Well, to get to the heart of the matter, I didn't get time to research like I wanted. Obviously, the generic thing and the truth is it's a business decision. Yeah. But what is the business decision? Can someone explain to me what it means? How do you save money by yanking a product and not even allowing it to go to physical media?
Well, that you've already paid for.
Right. How does this work?
Already, it's in the bank.
My understanding is like CBS Studios produces the show. And so Paramount Plus, which are owned by the same parent company, but they're separate, they have to pay CBS Studio for having it on their platform. So by removing it, they're not having to pay to have it there anymore.
It's kind of like internal budgets within a company. Like, I mean,
well, it's two companies technically, but they're just owned by the same parent company.
Right.
But
who's the parent company now?
Paramount Global.
Okay. Oh, I cannot keep up.
But then, I mean, I've read also that there's some kind of tax breaks they get when they remove things from this, but I don't have a good understanding of that, so I don't want to talk a lot about that. But I mean, obviously, there's a financial incentive to do it because that's what everybody does.
And that's what the That's what the behemoth that's called Max is doing over with HBO Max and Warner Brothers Discovery thing. And that started over there where they didn't just cancel shows; they literally yanked them from the service. Right. And some of them, like the soon to become legendary Batgirl movie, they yank it, and then they don't even go
put that out.
Right, and it doesn't even go to physical media. When they yank it, they yank it like you never get to even own it.
Right.
How does Nickelodeon fit into this, though?
Well,
Nickelodeon
That's a very good question. Let me get some. We've got a stack of comments already.
I bet.
And Nick comes up in that. So Clarence Brown, our buddy who runs Discussing Trek, great podcast. They do a live show every week like we do. Go watch it. It's fabulous. He's missing Prodigy already. Michael Phillips says, in retrospect, perhaps we should have seen it coming, given that the same thing happened with Discovery. Originally, we were getting season 5 at its regular time, and then suddenly it was canceled. Clarence agrees with something that you said, Michael. Oh, I guess that thing that Michael just said. Yes. Chad Colvin says, hey, Chad, nice to have you watching. Since Prodigy was a co-production between Paramount Plus and Nickelodeon, I wonder if it's the Nick ratings that are part of this. I heard Nick's overall ratings were dropping substantially since COVID hit. And I think that's the case with a lot of these platforms. It's a lot of stuff got dumped into providing content during COVID, and now there's less market for it. Right. Also, I blame Zaslav for the write-off strategy.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that.
And then finally, Michael Phillips says, I think it must have been purely a financial decision. Maybe their balance sheets are bleeding red everywhere and we just don't know it. Yeah, I mean, I
think
they
are.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, they are when they do these mega mergers because they absolutely lose money, and that's and these buyouts, and that's the thing.
Well, if you read any analysis like articles about Paramount Plus, it's not good. They're not in good shape, and I'm not in that industry, but I read it just out of interest. Things are not good. But my thought was, and this came up on our Facebook group as well, that sure, maybe the show's underperforming. Maybe Nick pulled out. I don't know. Right. But I mean, we're going into a year coming off a writer's strike where there's going to be light content, and they're just going to take 20 episodes. That's 20 weeks of material from their big franchise and just chunk it.
Yeah.
I mean, we might just get Prodigy next year. We don't know how long Strange New Worlds or Lower Decks are going to be delayed. But those 10 episodes of Discovery, that's what I meant was Discovery, might be the only thing that they've got Star Trek related out next year, for all we know.
Right. So at this point, we have one season of Discovery. Lower Decks is still on the table. Its next season is coming, and as far as we know, there's no cancellation in line for it, and we have Strange New Worlds. So once Discovery ends, we have 2 shows.
Right.
Now, we know that there's, unless something changes, we know that there's a Starfleet Academy show that's in development. At whatever stage of development it is, I don't know. But that seems like it was set up in last season of Discovery. So that seems like it's possibly, going to happen. Right. And then we have the Michelle Yeoh movie.
The Section 31 movie.
Section 31,
the one shot.
But all they have filmed or produced so far is the current season of Strange New Worlds we're watching, and the season of Lower Decks is coming up, and then the 5th season of Discovery, which is supposed to be out next year. Now, after that, everything's on hold. So it's for 2024. It might just be those 10 weeks of Discovery, and I mean, they've built, like you said before, their subscriber base. I don't know the numbers, but it's got to be a lot of Star Trek fans, because that's been their big content for 6 years. So I mean, like Veronica and I, for the past 2 years, we've just signed up for Paramount Plus. We pay the year in advance because there's been Star Trek on a year. But our renewal comes up in March, and we're gonna have to look at it like, is there going to be content that we want for a year's worth, or are we just subscribing month to month while Star Trek's on?
Yeah.
Right. Michael Phillips says that acquiring Showtime might have been a higher priority for them than keeping their Trek promises. I think that's clear that is the case.
Absolutely.
And the crazy thing is, with the Showtime, because they have Showtime now, they're upping their prices by like $20 a month.
Yeah, it's 20%.
They're upping their prices by 20%. And I mean, like that's the cost of Showtime subscription. So what? You're basically forcing Showtime on us.
Well, yes. Well, or you can go the ad version and not have to get Showtime.
Exactly. Clarence says, I hate to say it, but Showtime absolutely does not keep me around. Plus, it's price tiered, so the majority of folks won't even get it.
Right.
I am interested in Showtime mainly because there's a whole lot of music documentaries that I really want to watch. So I'll at least keep it for a little while.
Yeah. I mean, is there a year's worth of them?
I don't know. I don't think so.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
I wonder if us who've already paid for next year with the merger, are we going to get Showtime even though we haven't paid more, or do we have to wait until our renewal to get our Showtime access?
I don't know. It started this week, but I think I saw a thing pop up for Yellow Jackets on ours already, but I haven't. Yeah. I haven't spent a lot of time on Paramount Plus, to be honest with you, in the past few days. I mean, they do also have the back catalog of Star Trek, but I mean, this came up on my personal Facebook page in a discussion. I don't need them for that.
Yeah.
I've got so many copies of Star Trek episodes around here. Like, I've got copies of audio versions of the TOS episodes on my phone.
Wow.
Like I've got a lot of the new Paramount Plus stuff with audio description. I've got those audios downloaded to my phone so I can listen to them like an audio drama. Like I don't need to subscribe for a year to Paramount Plus to be able to watch Star Trek.
I was thinking about why this bothers me as much as it bothers me, because as I said, so many people will tell me, as if I'm being naive, well, Keith, it's business. It's always been business. And I get that. But I thought about this, and I think what it really boils down to this. Ever since I've been watching Star Trek as a child, the original series, TNG, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise, I hate to go here, but it was broadcast television. I didn't have to pay for it. Now, business reality, because if you look at the original series, you will notice when at the end credits it would say a Gulf plus Western company. There was a sale in the middle of all that, and everybody knows the original Star Trek was from Desilu, Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball's studio. So these things happen, and it turns over. You might remember that the United Paramount Network, UPN, was launched on the back of Voyager, along with a bunch of other crappy shows that they claim was going to give diversity to Black people, like Homeboys in Outer Space and The Secret Life of Desmond Pfeiffer. But the point of all this is, yes, seriously.
I watched Homeboys in Outer Space. I had Dan on it.
Oh my God, it was outer space. It was outer space pizza delivery. Seriously, Veronica. And so this is not the first time Paramount has screwed people, and it didn't live up to its promise. But the difference is, and I really have thought about this, the difference is back then it was on broadcast and I wasn't paying for it. Like you guys were saying, I wasn't having to allocate it in the budget. Back then, I got into discussion with somebody online about this. I know everybody says blah blah blah, you know, give up your Starbucks coffee and stuff like that. I have friends and family who literally can't afford to pay for as much cable as I pay for. I'm blessed to be able to pay for some streaming. They have to make a decision. And you know, some people say, "Oh, it's only $10 a month. You can afford that." I know people who they got to get the light. They got to keep their lights on, and they have to make that decision. And I think that's why it hurts more. You know, I have people who they just can't sit down and enjoy a new Star Trek. And then if they do sacrifice, something like this happens. It just feels personal almost in a strange way.
And Discovery came up earlier. And yes, it was disappointing that Discovery is being cut short. It wasn't originally planned to end after season 5, but they went back and did reshoots. It's going to have a resolution. They're airing the episodes, and it's had 4 seasons already, plus this next one. So that stings less than what they did to Prodigy. Because Prodigy, they just ripped off the streaming platform, so you can't see it. I mean, half of the episodes that have been released aren't even on physical media at this point. We don't know if it's coming, and they've got 20 episodes that got basically chunked in the drawer unless they can sell it somewhere else.
And that's exactly why, you know, they've been saying, mainly the production team has been saying that they're going to shop this around to other platforms. That's what makes me think that maybe there is a sale in the works that we don't know about, because why else would they yank this the way that they did? Why would they not ever release a physical media of any of it that's been produced? It seems so sudden. It just seems like there's got to be another layer to this that we aren't quite privy to.
Right. It happened right before their merge with Showtime, then days. Yes. But my understanding too is that their fiscal year's up in June, which is when my company at work, at my job, our fiscal year's up in June as well. So that's not uncommon. Here. But I mean, I think at the very least, CBS Studios is going to be highly motivated to shop this around and get it sold. If nothing else, just to recoup some of their investment. They've already put a lot of money into this. At the very least, so season 2 will become available in some format, I think. I think getting season 3 would be a lot longer shot.
Do you know what's really ironic? Do you know what's ironic? A couple of years ago, do you know who we would all know would buy a show like this immediately?
Netflix.
In a streaming service? Netflix.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, Amazon Prime might go. If I owned one, I would think. I mean, it's a very high quality show.
Yes.
It's, I mean, a lot of great morals in the show is really good for families, I think. And it's from like a big recognizable IP. So I think that it's got a good chance of at least getting season 2 out there.
It truly got better because I went back and looked at my own notes from the first episode, and as people know, I'm less enamored of the Star Trek Abrams verse than others.
Right.
And I remember my first notes were like, I can feel the Abrams verse universe, I can feel the Star Wars thing, and I always knew I'd like it. But I remember even saying on the show, I don't know how much I would get engaged in the show.
Right.
Every single episode got better than the one before.
Yeah.
Every single episode.
I mean, we recorded our opinions episode by episode. So
I
mean, folks are welcome to go back and listen. I mean, we weren't all in the first episode. We thought it looked good. It had potential, but it didn't feel very Star Trek-y at first. And it just we just got more and more into it as it went along. I think it just became a really great show. And I think that I think this is one of the big missed opportunities in Star Trek history.
Yeah.
Because I think that Prodigy, the potential that show had after one season, I think
absolutely
they're missing out.
I saw a Facebook post where somebody showed a picture of the CGI Chakotay and said, well, I guess he'll never be rescued or he'll still be stranded or something like that.
Yeah.
Right.
I saw one that was Admiral Janeway saying, I'm coming, Chakotay. And then it was the Paramount logo over Captain Shaw saying no.
That's awesome.
I think they made a mistake. Angering all the Star Trek fans days before their big media blitz for the Showtime merger, because their comments on Twitter have just been filled with Trekkies
and brutal,
angry Trekkies.
Right. I mean,
but you know, a couple of years.
Sorry. Paramount Plus has a history of doing stupid stuff.
I don't know how they haven't figured this out yet. Baffling.
From little things like putting Spock's name on a poster at San Diego Comic-Con to like literally right after they did the big promotion of, you know, all Trek, all series, all everything, leasing the movies off to somebody else for 6 months or whatever it was. Right. I mean, it's just a pattern with them, and no wonder they're in trouble.
Yeah.
I mean, I just don't get this.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's an accumulation because, again, you have fans who are upset that everything went behind a paywall. But at least at one point, everything that was in existence at the time was on Netflix. Then there was the whole CBS All Access, and people like, oh, I got to pay for this. Then there's the whole thing about some of the shows that get released in the United States or Europe, but not both at the same time.
Right.
Then you move from CBS All Access to Paramount. And I am talking to people like, I can't keep up anymore. I'm just done.
No. Of course
with
not.
all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And so far, I think that the intention had seemed to be, to do this broadcast a year or whatever after. And so far, I think only Disco season 1 has been on CBS proper. Right. I don't think that season 2 ever was. And I don't think any of the other shows ever were either. So they're not doing anything with this stuff. I mean, they're just kind of like producing this content and expecting people to come to them.
Right.
Without really doing, I mean, now I will say they have released like full episodes and one full season on YouTube. So that's something.
Yeah. And they're using like Pluto TV. They'll use their free platform and they'll put episodes out there in that way, which I think is good. I mean, that's good. Yeah. But I mean, I would hate to see Prodigy dumped on Tubi or Pluto TV or something. I think it deserves better than that.
Agreed.
Charles,
just two last.
Go ahead. I was going to say quick, and Charles, you had posted too that it was the DVD or Blu-rays were selling out online.
Yeah,
for the first season.
Because Trekkie's been swamping them. Amazon's back in stock now, but for several days there, it was like Amazon, Best Buy, Target, Barnes and Noble. Trekkies were buying out all their stock. Which is good. And I mean, I got one as soon as I heard, because I was like, well, screw you guys. And I bought a set of the toys. I hadn't bought the toys yet, but a lot of folks hadn't bought that Blu-ray set. I hadn't bought it the first half of the season because I was waiting to see if there was going to be a full season set.
Right.
Because they'll do that. They'll double dip. And then I got to buy the first half twice. Right. But I mean, it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. Now that I bought it, now they'll put the whole season out.
Yeah, probably. Two quick last comments. Michael Phillips says, at least having Showtime enabled me to watch the brilliant Michelle Yeoh in Everything Everywhere All at Once. Although, wasn't that on Disney? Wasn't that on Disney Plus?
It was on something else because I had access.
It was on something else because I had it available. And Vandy Beth Glenn, hi Vandy Beth, says, I just checked and both seasons of Yellow Jackets are now on Paramount Plus. Yes.
Yeah.
All the Showtime stuff shows up on mine. I don't know what the billing is like,
Right. Yeah. I'm not against Showtime in principle. I just am subscribing to Paramount Plus because I want to watch Star Trek.
Yeah. I don't care about Showtime, but I'm not against it. I agree. Right. So in the final analysis, is there any kind of realistic rumor about anybody that might buy them? Nothing.
No,
right?
Nothing.
Everything from the creators is just, be positive, keep trying. And I mean, for the fans, I think the big thing is just keep making noise. So if people are looking at what the Prodigy numbers and social media engagement and stuff looks like, they'll see something.
Right.
There are online petitions that have started. People are signing, actually.
It's up to like 25,000 now.
It is, yes. Yeah. The crappy thing about this is that this was Star Trek, the television franchise's first push into the youth market. Right. And it's something that has been needed for decades. And that's where Star Wars trumps Trek in all things. Yeah. They get kids engaged and Star Trek does not. And it's a shame that, and it was a good move for them to partner with Nickelodeon and to make it available in somewhere other than just their own streaming platform. Children will come to us because of Prodigy. They won't. No. So it was nice that at least had that partnership with Nickelodeon so that they had some reach into that market.
Yeah. You look at what the Clone Wars and what Star Wars Rebels have done for Star Wars.
Right.
Now they're pulling characters from those shows for the live action shows on Disney Plus. I think Ahsoka, almost everybody from Rebels is on there in live action.
Basically, yes, everyone is. And I can't wait.
And the Mandalorian pulls a lot from Clone Wars. It's
and Bad Batch. Come on.
This show could have fed Star Trek for years. I think. If they could have marketed it, I've seen the show. I don't see how you can't sell it to kids or sell it to Trekkies because it's very much, to me, should appeal to both.
Yes.
But I mean, maybe don't air it 5 weeks at a time at different times of the year.
Oh
Maybe
my
that'd
God,
be a
that
good
was the
start.
dumbest thing ever.
You know, or maybe keep it on a time slot in Nickelodeon. I don't give it time to grow. It's just the whole thing is very frustrating. I feel like they fumbled the ball with it, and then like, well, this ball's broken, and it stormed off. You know,
Right.
when it's not the ball's fault. Like I don't feel like they know what they have, and I mean, you look at the success that from mining '90s Trek nostalgia Picard just had, and I mean, Prodigy's perfect for that because you can revisit all the same characters, but 15 years earlier when they're not senior citizens yet. They're all in their prime. We could have seen Worf as captain of the Enterprise and found out what happened there. We could have seen the lead up to the Romulan supernova. We could have seen Ambassador Spock again. I mean, they've got a great guy playing him in the video games now. I mean, any character from the 90s you mentioned, and they all could have been on the show like Janeway was as active characters. And I just think it's a huge missed opportunity.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's sad. I wonder, I was thinking that Anson Mount a few years ago, when he was in a failed TV show, The Inhumans, playing Black Bolt, and then turned around and got what he thought was kind of like a guest spot as Pike, knew that he was going to end up anchoring what was left of the Star Trek universe.
Yeah.
Right. Well, speaking of that, let's make the turn and go talk about Strange New Worlds.
Hey, segue!
Thank you for that, Keith. So if you're listening to the audio podcast, we'll take a quick break and promote a fellow ESO Network podcast show. But don't go away, because when we come back, we'll be talking about Strange New Worlds tomorrow, and tomorrow. And if you're watching with us live, Veronica, do you want to do a spoiler warning to bring us back in?
Whoop, whoop, whoop. Spoiler. Whoop. Spoiler. Whoop. Spoiler.
I was wondering how long that was going to go.
Well, you got to give people time to leave if they don't want to hear spoilers.
Right. Yeah. Throw their phone out the window.
Gravitational waves.
All right. Well, before we get too far into tomorrow, I think the writers have given Christina Chong a real difficult position, or at least made it hard to talk about her, because every aspect of La'an Noonien Singh's character, it seems like it's wrapped up in some sort of big, canon controversy with the Gorn, with Kirk, with Khan. And so every conversation with her, you get sucked into this continuity black hole. So before we get too far into it, I think we should talk a little about Christina Chong's performance and about her character, sort of separate from the continuity issues, and make sure that we address that before we spend half an hour arguing about the canon of Star Trek. But I think she's great. I think she's doing a great job.
She did a lot of range this week.
Yeah.
When she came onto the show, and I had nothing against her, I thought that she was a little cliched. She was, the angry person. Mm-hmm. We've seen it so many times. Ensign Rowe, Kira Nerys. We've seen the angry person. But as you said, she has a range. They've softened her a little bit. They've allowed her to become friends with people on the crew. Mm-hmm. And I agree with you. I personally completely dislike the fact that she's Noonien Singh, but she's a good actress, and I like her. And she holds my attention when she's on screen. Mm-hmm. And she really is doing a good job of being tough as nails, and at the same time trying to open herself up to people. Right. So as far as the character development, I like it. But as you say, I have huge issues with continuity, but that's a whole other discussion. Sure. But I really like her as an actress.
Yeah. Yeah, and just as a character who, she deals with this big thing from her heritage that she's found shameful and had been felt persecuted about and so forth, and then this episode having to go back and sort of face it, but also seeing a version of the world where that could be taken away, and dealing with someone in Kirk this episode who didn't see her that way because it was sort of separate from that context. I thought those were really good turns for the character, and I think that she's doing a great job. I thought that she was fantastic in this episode.
Yeah, she was.
Absolutely.
She was very much lighter because she didn't feel like she was being judged. I think, that gave her a lot more room to play with what she can do.
Sure, yeah. She didn't seem as rigid when she was back.
No, not at all. I do have a question that people have talked about, and I guess it's a real true question because it's happened in real life. If your last name were Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin, Pol Pot, Dahmer, would you pass that name down through generations, or would you change it? Because a lot of we've had a discussion, and we talked about before how a lot of Germans and German Jews who left Europe came to America. They changed their name, or they changed how they pronounced it, especially Germans, so that it didn't sound as quote unquote German during the times of the fascism. Yeah. I'm wondering why you carry Noonien Singh as your last name.
Yeah,
right.
That's
Because that,
right.
you know,
Yeah, if you don't want that stigma hanging over your head, why did
Right.
you double down by keeping that name going into service with that name?
yeah. And
That's
it's
a
funny
good
because
point, Keith.
thank you. Last week we just talked about passing.
Yeah.
And I got on my moral high horse and said, you know, if I could, I would never pass as white. I would never do it. And then this week I'm like, I don't know. I'd tell him to change my last name to Clark or Johnson or something. Ready to deal with this. So there goes my moral high horse.
Yeah.
That is a great comparison, Keith. That is fantastic. Good job.
Thank you.
Ooh.
All right. Well, let's dive into some of the continuity black holes then, because
Lord.
this episode is comprised of them.
Oh boy, where do you want to start?
Well, I'll start with, you know, I've said on the podcast before that I think it's silly to feel like you have to move the date of the eugenics wars, because obviously it
Agreed.
didn't happen. You move it to 2040. Well, guess what?
Right.
2040 is going to come, and hopefully it's still not going to happen. So then you're
Exactly.
just moving the problem downfield. But I actually really liked the way they handled it in this episode.
Because it was an alternate timeline.
I liked that, you know, she had this little spiel about how, you know, it was supposed to happen 30 years ago. There's a temporal Cold War, and people keep interfering it and trying to prevent it and trying to stop it, and it just keeps moving. But I thought that worked because, I mean, like when the eugenics wars have been inconsistent since they were introduced. Originally,
absolutely,
the eugenics wars were the last of our so-called world wars, and they were related to selective breeding, not genetic manipulation the way we think of it now. It was like a selective breeding, like actual eugenics programs that led to this final world war. But I mean, every time that the late 20th or early 21st century is described in Star Trek, it's different. It's inconsistent. And now we actually have a reason for that. You know, we're seeing, you know, people messing with the timeline, and just the facts get different. The casualties and the dates and things like that just change.
You know what? That's brilliant, because I didn't put that together.
Yeah.
And that I'm okay with that. That makes sense.
I think that's cool.
There was a novel, I don't know if you or Alan read it, but there was a novel came out years and years ago, and I think you guys know about it. It's the one where they tried to say the eugenics war was actually things like Islamic terrorism and stuff. And it was all that stuff that was kind of fought behind the scenes and politically and ideologically, not a true world war.
Right.
I don't know if that book ever even came close to trying to get it right, but I like
it's
that.
a good book by Greg Cox, and there was two of them, and they're followed by a book called Terrain in Hell, which is about Khan on SETI Alpha 5. But they were good books, but also not consistent with the episode.
Anything.
Right. Oh, okay. Well, I'm okay with that part. Actually, I got to scratch out the notes I wrote in here. I'm so sick of the temporal Cold War, but that would kind of make sense, because, as you said, if we're going to deal with the fact that Khan didn't rule 1/4 of the surface of the Earth in 1992, 1996, as far as I know, then I guess maybe you need to move it or something like that.
Yeah,
that's pretty interesting.
I liked. I mean, if they had just said, you know, the eugenics works took place in the 2040s, and I just asserted that would have really bothered me, because that's obviously not what they said in the original series. But the fact that they wrote it into the story that it has the date has changed, well, fine. There is a temporal Cold War. That's a thing from Star Trek.
That's true.
I am a little, because what you said, Charles, earlier about that's a very good point, that the eugenics war was selective breeding, like the Vulcans do, not true genetic manipulation. Right. They also talked about how this was something like scientists who seem to have done this across the world.
Right.
So I did wonder, why is a Sikh Khan in Canada? Why is he being grown in Canada? And how does he get from there to Southeast Asia and take over a quarter of the surface of the Earth? That's weird.
Right. Well, I mean, they describe him as a Sikh in the original series, and he doesn't have a beard. Right. I think Sikhs have beards, but yeah. I mean, well, what do we think of Kirk?
Okay,
let me get him out of the way.
You go ahead, Keith.
Well, because I belly about this for months, and I'm just going to get it out of the way. I cannot express how strongly that I think James Kirk does not belong in this series. Just in the story. I'm irritated. But outside of that, honestly, because I always try to take my personal feelings out. And then some people said they didn't want a Kirk imitator. He's not. No. I honestly don't think he needs to be Jim Kirk for the story I watched today to work. I think making him Kirk it did nothing for me. His character, that actor, could have been a completely different character, and I would have bought him. I don't think he needed to be Jim Kirk. So he's kind of a non-entity for me.
He is a completely different character, except that they call him Kirk.
Yeah.
Correct.
People made a big deal about this at the end of season 1. And the explanation was, well, this is an alternate, version of Kirk. So it's not going to be the same. Well, we essentially get an alternate version of Kirk here too. So if they're going to do Kirk, in the movies, I never had any trouble buying Chris Pine as Kirk. I think that he really got the character.
Right.
Agreed.
I just don't find Kirk in this series.
Yeah.
At all.
Either.
I feel like they're doing that intentionally.
Well, I think it's I think it's Paul Wesley's physicality. I think I have a hard time finding Kirk in the way he moves, the way he looks. Just this is not a criticism of the way he looks or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I think he's written very well. I like the way they're writing Kirk.
Yeah.
I don't think that his physicality, he just doesn't feel like Kirk to me.
I agree.
What I found. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brian.
So we were watching something else with William Shatner before Star Trek when he was like super baby young. Like he looked super young in the first season of Star Trek, but this was it that
Twilight Zone episode we were watching?
Probably it was probably a Twilight Zone episode.
Or
but
wasn't the lieutenant or anything, was it?
No, it wasn't that far back.
Okay.
But I could see the resemblance between the two.
With Paul Wesley?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm not familiar enough with Kirk's physicality to put the two together.
Here's the thing that I felt, again, because like I said, I honestly, my feelings about Kirk and the show it all aside. When I watched Wesley, and I made a note, I said he was trying to play Kirk. He kept furrowing his brow, and he kept sitting a certain way. He was coming off like somebody trying to portray a military officer, and I noticed it. However, ironically, when he relaxed, and actually, this is so weird, and did stuff that irritated the hell out of me, like not knowing how to go through a turnstile door, and joking about the hot dogs, to what you said earlier, Alan, I was like, oh, I like the character, but it's not Kirk. So be whatever that character is. And I'm okay, rename him to something else. I was fine with him, as long as I kept not thinking him as Kirk, which is weird.
And that point about the revolving door, when you see it in the trailer, your first reaction is, but he grew up on Earth, so how could he not know what a revolving door is? Because he says, I'm from space. But at least in the episode, when you finally see the episode, this version of Kirk was not ever on Earth. He was born on the USS Iowa in space.
No, that was funny.
Yeah, it was. And so I thought that was a good job of covering their tracks on that one. But I just don't just call him something else.
Amen to that. Because even the time travel thing, because what you just said, Alan, you made a very good point. I kept saying, if I could just forget he's Kirk, it was fascinating for an alternate reality where starship captains are born on ships because Earth was jacked by the Romulans.
Yeah.
And, as you know, there's all kinds of science fiction novels. I can't remember one. I think it was called The Mote in God's Eye or something like that. But it's a whole thing, and it's a whole theory about if there are intelligent races out there, as you probably heard, why do we never hear from them? Because they don't want competition. And I've read books where as soon as the society thinks you're going to come out into space, they don't do first contact. They bomb you out of existence just to get you out of the way. And so I love that. I love that alternate timeline. And I'm like, wow, he grew up on a starship because Earth has been devastated. Awesome stuff. But then he's supposed to be Kirk.
Right. Okay, so Michael Phillips says, I was annoyed that they jettisoned the entire main cast to bring in Kirk after 2 Pike Light episodes in a row.
Agreed.
I guess they must think that fans are itching to see Paul Wesley again. I don't get it. And we already had several La'an heavy episodes last season. More Una, more Pike, please. Now, I think everybody knows at this point that the production on season 2 kind of coincided with Anson Mount's baby being born. So he's essentially on paternity leave.
Yeah.
It's just all at the front of the season. So his absence is very much noticeable.
I don't get, like, you don't have to film them in order.
Right.
Like film a Pike heavy one and put it up front.
Right. Yeah. You might have to because of availability of guest artist or something
That
like
could be.
that. But still, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
You got to have your star of your show leading off the season.
Because a lot of what I like about Strange New Worlds is Anson Mount.
Of course.
Anson Mount is a huge part of the charm of the show.
And Michael, to answer your other question, it's very, very obvious, but it's true. When Amazon came out with the Rings of Power series, and anybody who knows Tolkien knows that officially no Hobbit-like creature should be in this series. And the creators said, end of story, we cannot do a series without hobbits in the story. And they just convinced themselves they had to have Hobbit-like creatures, and they convinced themselves the fans wanted hobbits. And so to answer your question, Michael, this is the bottom line. James Kirk is arguably the single most popular character in the franchise. I've read interviews with Akiva Goldsman and others, and they honestly feel that Kirk is a draw, that he has to be there. And they think there's a significant number of fans who will just flock to the show because James T. Kirk is in the show. And the same for La'an, because she's Noonien Singh. They honestly think that these people are draws,
right,
and they have to have them. Doesn't work for me, but that's what they feel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There is a Facebook user who says his name rhymes with Fill the Pond. I don't know who this is. Is a little lost because he doesn't know what show we're talking about. So then he discovered that it must be a series that he hasn't seen. I'm guessing this is Strange New Worlds. It's behind the paywall, isn't it? Well, yes.
Yes.
You missed the first half of our conversation about that paywall.
Right.
Yeah. So today's episode is the third episode of season 2 of Strange New Worlds, and that is what we're talking about.
That's
right.
But
you can see all of season 1 on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, it's still fun listening to you all. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And as Veronica says, you can watch all of season 1 of Strange New Worlds on the YouTube channel. Mm-hmm. So please do that because it's a great show.
And the season 2 premiere they put on there as well.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Nice. Yeah. Nice.
Which
yes,
I'm sure is for a limited. I'm sure it's for a limited time. So I would check
that out. It's Bill Lemond.
Oh,
now I got it. Okay. Maybe he pronounces his name Lamond. That must be it, because he says it rhymes with Fill the Pond. So it must be Bill Lamont. Well, hi, Bill. Thank you so much for joining us. That's cool.
Yay.
Yes. Bill? Okay. Sorry. So what else do we want to nitpick about?
I thought there was a lot of elements of this episode that felt reminiscent of Picard season 2, but I thought were better executed here. For one, they didn't last 8 episodes, but also, there was a lot of similarities. A time traveling Romulan involved, and there was a car chase with the cops. And which, speaking of which, Canadian cops are kind of pushovers.
Dude,
no kidding.
What was that? Come on.
No license. Oh, we'll let you go with a warning this time. You don't have your license. I left it
even though you're driving recklessly and almost hitting people and
a stolen car.
Oh my god, it was so stupid. In a stolen car.
And then
exactly.
Like the day after a terrorist attack, just bribe your way past the border guard twice across into the U.S. out of the country. Like you'd think everything would be on lockdown.
Mm-hmm. As far as cars go, I wrote in my note the only person who realistically drove a car was James Kirk in A Piece of the Action, because there's no way somebody from space should know how to drive a dang car like that. Then at one point he was backing it up and looking over his shoulder and seriously? I mean, starships and cars, it's kind of a trope.
Definitely not the same.
Well, I thought they did a good job of splitting the difference between elements of the Kelvinverse Kirk and elements of the Prime Kirk, because you had a little bit where he's having trouble driving the car, like A Piece of the Action, but also you have him driving a sports car like he did in 2009 and things like that. But I did really like when Kirk was hustling chess to make money.
Yeah.
How many games of chess did he play to make that much money?
To get that hotel room? That's a lot of games of chess.
Come on.
Also, I agree.
These are old dudes in the park. Come on.
Also, I agree, Alan. I also wrote he better be glad that was Canada, because if he hustled that many people in New York, he probably got jacked by somebody.
That is true.
Just truthfully, I have a question, because I'm a little confused about this, and I've seen this online a lot. Does La'an have augment powers and abilities, or no?
Not that she's ever demonstrated.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Because even in the flashback, when they said previously on Star Trek, they said some stuff the way she was talking as if she had augment abilities.
Well,
and I think people online are confused about that.
I think let's see what they phrased it last week, that she was concerned that like they would manifest or something. That was the impression that I got, but I don't remember what a quote would be.
Which is weird, because how could she be in Starfleet if that's even a possibility? Because
well, I mean, so far as we know, her DNA has never been augmented. She's just descended from people who were augmented. So I think I don't think it's illegal to have ancestors who have augmented DNA. You know what I mean?
Wow.
I don't know for sure.
Boy, that's a fine line. That's
right.
A fine line.
It kind of feels like maybe they're leading up to she actually is, but she doesn't know it, and the reaction that she has when she learns that she is. I mean, I really don't want them to keep going down this route. You know, I want to get back to just fun, standalone episodes and just go forward. I mean, I don't mind character development and stuff like that, but I feel like we've got enough of La'an to really have a handle on her. Let's get to some of the others.
Yeah, the show felt, and this is weird, the show felt light to me in that it wasn't one of the better time travel stories.
Right.
I felt that the attraction they had felt rushed because it was kind of weird. Like after a couple hours, they were giving each other Google eyes. I thought that was a little strange. I just didn't buy that. And then I think, and when you don't love a show, you can start looking at stuff that was, kind of like, that doesn't make sense. When they were in that facility, I wrote in my notes, this is a facility that has both a cold fusion reactor and genetic engineering research. And I counted 3 guards when the alarms went off. And that lady, that Romulan lady, shot them all. And it was going doot, 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 doot. And it went on and on. And there were no guards. Like, where the hell? Also, guys, forgive me. I'm nitpicking. I know it, but I had to say this. When La'an put her handprint on that door stayed green for like 5 minutes.
Yes, that's true.
Have you ever used an identity card on the door that stays green? That's what I like when you were saying, Alan. I was kind of losing. I was like, okay, I know enough about La'an. So then I'm just nitpicking everything at that point.
So go ahead, Keith. I mean,
no, I was done.
No, I was just going to say I did like that sign, and I wanted to read the rest of it. It'd be like giant spiders that way, death rays this way.
Right. On a completely different track from what we're talking about, what did you think of her going and finding Pelia, and what we see of Pelia at this point in her lifespan?
I feel like that's 2 separate things that I have opinions on. On the one hand, them going to find Pelia was like extraordinarily convenient, but also I feel like Vermont's way far away from Toronto. Like that's a solid drive. Like that's a couple of days back and forth, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've never driven it, but I feel like that's like driving from here to Orlando or something. Like I feel like that's a ways that you have to go there, like stay the night, get back, with a ticking clock going on.
Yes,
assuming that you can locate Pelia, that she has the same name 400 years ago.
And they apparently checked multiple universities first.
Yeah.
Right. I thought that was a little contrived.
Yeah.
And I gotta say this because this was bad. This is like the worst science I've ever seen. And let me just tell you this for a fact. If a building emits enough radiation for the hands on a wristwatch to glow, that whole city is dead. Everybody is dead. You are dead. Radiation does not work that way. That was literally the worst science I think I've ever seen in Star Trek. It it cannot work that way. It cannot. You literally for those watch hands, because my dad used to have. Remember back in the day before we knew radiation was that bad? I don't know if you guys remember, but my dad had a glow-in-the-dark watch with radioactive material on the watch dial. That stuff is painted on the dial, so it is literally a millimeter from particles. If you can walk down the street and the radiation is making that thing dial, I'm not joking. That entire city is dead. This is like Hiroshima. So that was like horrible science. But even then, maybe because like you were saying, Alan, I was a little tired of La'an. Then I'm like, y'all don't have time to be like kissing and crap like that where you're trying to stop the end of the world. So that's something, it didn't flow to me. It's
you
like
got time for a road trip to Vermont. You've got time. It would have been less contrived if Pelia happened to have been in Toronto than like they did in Star Trek Picard when Guinan happened to be in LA.
Yes.
Yeah,
but I did like her performance. I
did too,
and I liked that they went back in time. And she's like, "I'm not an engineer. What are you talking about?"
I know.
I did too.
Yes,
that was kind of funny.
Yeah,
that was kind of funny, and I like her excuses even earlier about. The jury's still out on whether I like the character a lot or not. But I thought it was funny when she was basically like, you get bored, you'll be stealing art too. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but I thought that was kind of funny. Like, you live through every human event, and you live through every event in human history, you'll be doing the same stuff I am.
Yeah.
And then, like she said, the painting from the Louvre was fake. Like, I don't think so.
Right. I did feel like she was much more Carol Kane this week than the first episode, which I really enjoyed. And another thing that I find has been really interesting about this season so far is every episode has been only an A story. There's no B stories running concurrently with these things. So you're getting a fuller story. Plus, this episode was 61 minutes.
Yeah, it's a solid hour.
Yeah.
That was more than I could do on my lunch break today.
Wow. Were you late?
No, I watched 10 minutes of it before I went to work.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Smart.
Let's see. Kirk, this is Michael Phillips. Kirk must be one hell of a chess player to be able to afford that $400 a night presidential suite hotel room in Toronto.
Well, the Kirk we know plays 3D chess against a Vulcan and wins. So he should be able to hustle people in the park at 2D chess. That I liked a lot.
But yeah, I agree. But how long does it take to hustle that much money? Because wow, that's a lot of money.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like $400 a night is a good price for that big old room.
Yeah.
I've never stayed in a room like that. Or maybe I did when we were in Cancun, but it was more than that.
Yeah.
Michael Phillips also says tritium only emits beta radiation, not gamma or neutron, but they'd never let it escape into the air. It's too valuable and it's too dangerous. And if you breathe it or ingest it, I think I messed that sentence up. Epic science fail.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, agreed.
The whole thing was contrived, especially when you've got a future gizmo that could just like, boop, 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 boop. Oh, it's beeping. It wants us to go that way. You know what I mean? And skip that whole 15 minutes.
Right.
I mean, you get to make up what this guy's gizmo does. It's from the future.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. Where's Daniels when you need him?
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Or it could have a hologram with information they could have read on it.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting. Sorry, go ahead, Alan.
No.
I've been
okay, fine.
A lot, so go for it.
Okay. Well, okay. So you've got Kirk. You found a contrived way to feed Kirk into the storyline. I did like the whole setup where La'an goes to the bridge because she thinks that the message is go to the bridge, not the bridge. And all of a sudden her bridge crew is the same, but the captain is different. And I thought that was a really cool moment. But why bring Kirk into this if it's in an alternate timeline, a different future? And B, why bring him in if you're just going to kill him?
Absolutely.
2/3 of the way through the episode.
It made no sense at all.
Because he's coming back.
I agree.
Because now Lieutenant Kirk will wind up on the ship.
Though I know that we'll still get another Kirk because we have to have one from our timeline because we still haven't had a Kirk from our timeline yet.
True. That's true.
But why?
Yeah.
Why
because
does it have to be Kirk?
Well, the same reason they have to have the whole thing with Pike's destiny in the chair and he knows about it. And Kirk's destined to be on the Enterprise.
I know.
They're big on that.
I know.
Yeah.
They did have a line in this though that kind of went along with that when they're like, whenever you change history and history wants to correct itself, which would kind of indicate like, I mean, you go to any alternate timeline in Star Trek, and it's the same folks who are there. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
no matter how different the history is, the same characters will be there. But
I would like to see a whole episode set on that Earth, that alternate Earth that has been destroyed by Romulans and Spock is on a ship that's he's the captain of and he's fighting Romulans and we need your help and sorry buddy we're not going to.
So I just think that was my one complaint was Spock was there, but there's no alliance with Earth and Vulcan, so Spock wouldn't have existed because Spock's father Sarek wouldn't have gotten with Amanda. So why is Spock there?
Dude, that's brilliant.
I hadn't even thought of that.
I hadn't either.
That was my one complaint. I none of the other stuff.
Well, that's a biggie, and that is very well done.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Did not occur to me at all.
I was too busy writing it. I can't stand Kirk on the show, and Tritium doesn't work like this. I completely missed that.
You could have written the Kirk thing last night and been ready.
True. That's a good. I never thought about that about Spock.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
My good buddy.
Mm-hmm.
My good buddy Ed Degree says that he needs Kirk to fund his Dragon Con room.
Yes, please.
Yeah,
then I would stay at a hotel.
There's a park right next to the Dragon Con hotels where you can just play chess all day long.
Start practicing. You got it.
Charles, you were mentioning about the whole time travel thing. I thought it was very interesting, and this is something Trek has been doing on and off. In this episode, they seem to go back to the old school definition of a single timeline that will be changed or reset itself instead of the multiverse, where every time you do something, you just shift into another universe. I thought that was very interesting because then they had the whole discussion where Kirk says, if I basically go along with you, I may not exist. And then later on, he says something to the effect of, I think I'd rather the universe you told me about exist than this one that I'm in.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting.
Yes. And, we kind of got that in the Next Gen episode. Which one was it? Where they see all the different, time fractures, and they see
parallels.
All the different alternate. Thank you, parallels. I kept thinking Pegasus, and I know that wasn't right. And you see that one where Riker is like, "Oh, you don't understand. It's so bad here."
That's a great one. He shows up on the internet a lot. That picture.
Right. Yeah. I hope you all enjoyed my impression of alternate Riker.
That was good.
I almost quickly grew a scraggly beard just to pull the whole look off. But okay, so Michael Phillips says, I would have loved to have seen La'an and Pelia go to the past, and Pelia could have met her younger self. That would have been comedy gold and a good chance to develop the character. I kind of like that idea.
Yeah,
sure.
that would be
That's really cool.
And Pelia could have navigated the world better too, having lived
there.
And
that's true. And come on, Amanda Rose, hi Amanda, says Spock wouldn't have been there. I missed that, and it's huge.
It is.
Good job, Veronica.
It is.
Okay. Dan Leckie says, I disagree. There are multiple timelines in this episode.
Okay.
Well, there's two. There's La'an jumped into Kirk. La'an jumped into the alternate Kirk where Kirk was born on the USS Iowa. But Dan, that Kirk specifically said that if I help you, I will not exist and my timeline will not exist, because she was trying to figure a way to bring him out of that timeline into her timeline. So I'm not saying that's the way it is, but they were speaking in this episode as if that timeline would disappear, not form a multi-universe.
Right. That's the way the episode presented it.
Right. Which I thought was so I'm going to ask real quick. I guess so this is what we're here saying. This was 21st century Toronto, right? That's where we were. So for some reason, it's because of the temporal Cold War, the Romulans are attacking Earth even before we develop warp drive, because they know because that was her point, right? Humanity's going to become such a problem.
Yeah.
Well, they're taking us out before we become their enemy, basically.
But it looks like they're doing that by causing us to avoid our whole World War III time frame.
Right.
Which we don't go through that dark period and then emerge into the Federation and join with the Vulcans and everything. So I guess then the Romulans can attack, and they're fighting the Vulcans, they're fighting the humans, but we're not a alliance like we would be if we went through that and then met the Vulcans, and basically disrupting our history.
Right.
One thing, a couple alternate things have said, and I got to say personally, I don't agree with this, but it would be an interesting thing. It's because the Vulcans are logical and the Romulans are militaristic. People kind of sort of tend to think that the Romulans would take the Vulcans. I gotta be honest, my money would be on the Vulcans in a war, because lack of emotion does not mean lack of martial ability. And the Vulcans are like the Shaolin monks of legend. They train for everything. I can't imagine a whole race of people who throw their kids into the desert at age 7 would fall to the Romulan Empire. I think that'd be a hell of a battle.
They were going to invade the Vulcans one time with those 3 dinky little ships, and
oh god,
so they're feeling confident about it, Keith.
I know. What a horrible episode. Yeah, 2,000 troops.
Welcome to this week's episode of Who Would Win.
Yes.
No, I'll say I've liked every episode this season so far, and I like this episode. I thought it was fun. This is probably my least favorite of the 3 so far. But the first 3 episodes of last season, I was way more into, because they were going to new planets I'd never heard of. There was a whole comet episode. There was new aliens I never heard of.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to get back to. Let's go back to some strange new worlds, do some things that I've not heard of and are out there in the universe. Let's get strange and new worlding. you know.
Yeah. I think I agree with you, Charles. I don't dislike it. I could easily. This is not an episode I would skip. I could watch it again, no problem. But I do think, and I saw this online after last week's episode, it felt like a huge letdown. Only because we were so primed, you know.
Yeah. Last week's episode was remarkable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, not every episode is going to stack up to that.
Right.
You know, so
hopefully next week will be Captain Pike on A Strange New World. That's what I'm hoping for.
Please. Yes.
Need it.
Not with Gorn.
All right, Alan, where can people find more of you?
Okay, well, if you want to hear more of my sexy, lovely voice, then I've got a couple of other podcasts for you. One is called Modern Musicology, and we tried to do our 75th episode live this past Sunday, but storms in Atlanta knocked my power out until the next day. So we are going to be doing it this Sunday night. So tune in on our Facebook page or our YouTube channel. And I also have a Doctor Who podcast called Doctor Who A to Z, and our new episode comes out tomorrow morning.
And how about you, Keith?
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, primarily the ESO Network Facebook groups.
How about us, Veronica?
Feltnerdy.com.
And?
Monkeying Around, a podcast about the monkeys.
And do you have a closing for us this week?
I saved you with a hot dog.
Hey, perfect.
Okay, I love it.
Kirk does that.
All right, everybody. See you next Thursday night. 8
Thanks for
p.m.
participating,
Eastern.
everybody. Bye.
Bye.